like to welcome Bruwer. Bruwer is he's an absolute stalwart in the wine industry. I met him for the first time maybe 5 or 6 years ago at a wine cellar tasting. Can't remember what we were tasting. I think it was Cab Franc or it was Bordeaux or something. More recently, Bruwer came to my house. We've got a Deep South tasting group, and he gave me one of the most incredible tastings I've ever had, where it was his family Cabernet Franc, and we tasted a vertical from 2012 to 2019. And the wines were two things. Firstly, they were all fresh and they were all brilliant for the age. And secondly, they showed exactly what each vintage had to offer for those wines. And there were some similarities between the vintages, and those similarities showed up in the wines. You can only do that if you've got really, really good quality wines. And so you will hear me, I would have talked about lifestyle ranges in the past and entry-level wines. But, you know, when you talk about Bruwer, his lifestyle or his entry-level range is sometimes the top quality for other producers. So he really makes award-winning wines. But I'm not going to tell you everything. I'm going to introduce Bruwer. Bruwer, welcome. Thanks so much for coming on. Thanks for the offer of the box of wines for those who managed to get. Let's just start. You know, you were sitting at school one day. I don't know if you had already decided that you want to be a winemaker or what got you into it, but tell us, how did you end up from there to where you are now as a world-recognized winemaker?
Thank you, Harry, and thanks for all joining. I didn't start at school whatsoever. I never thought that I would ever become a winemaker, and not even after I left school I thought so. I did my national service like we all had to do. I was in the Air Force, and after that I just wanted to go and see the world and travel overseas, backpacking we called it. And I had to sort of make up 2 or 3 months to wait for my buddy, and my brother was studying at Stellenbosch, and he got me a job at what is today Somersbosch, which is on the R44 just across Eikendal. So he got me a harvest job there. There was nothing fancy. I was driving the tractor, I was counting the kissies and basically just helping to bring the harvest in. And then the farmer's father came to me, Waliru, and said, listen here, what are you going to do with your life? I said, well, I'm not sure yet. You know, I just want to go see the world. I've tired of wearing my hair short and being told what to do. I really just want to sort of, you know, just break free a bit. And he said, well, have you got no idea? Yes. I said, yeah, you know, I really like flavors and I like food. Maybe I go to chef school, maybe even hotel school. I really don't know. And he said, have you gone to the cellar yet? I said, no. He said, well, the next load of grapes, hop onto the tractor and, you know, go and see what they do. And I did. And the next day he came to me, he said, so did you do that? I said, yes. And he said, so what did you find? I said, it's quite amazing because I've tasted grapes here while we harvest it. I went to the cellar, they crush it, you know, and they get the juice out, and the juice sort of have the same flavors than the grapes. And then they ferment it, and I tasted, I think it was Chenin Blanc at the time. And I said, those flavors that I tasted in the vineyard and the juice and the wine actually have, there's a correlation. I can clearly see where the flavors came from. He said, listen here, Putti, you're going to become a winemaker one day. And I was very little cocky coming out of the Air Force at that stage. I said, Wally, I don't want to be rude, but I think you're absolutely crazy. So I eventually decided, well, there's nothing, I must say I did enjoy it. And he's also said, Bruwer, if you can work in the field and work in the vineyards and still enjoy it, you know, it only gets more interesting further on. So I applied for Elsenburg Agricultural College and I left. I went to work in the UK. I ended up in the Middle East. I worked in Greece. I ended up in Israel. I really traveled the world. And I then got a message from my dad to say that I've been accepted at Elsenburg. and I must come back. So, and I must say, from the first day at Elsenburg, I just knew this is for me. This is what I wanted to do, and I never was a particular good student whatsoever. And but I mean, at Elsenburg, I really excelled, and I did exceptionally well. I actually got a bursary in my third year from the then KWV. So you know, I really just knew that that was what I wanted to do. And basically, when I finished, I got a job offer from Blauw-Klippen, and actually halfway through my third year. And but I knew that I wanted to go and see what the world of wine has to offer. And there's basically 4 places that I wanted to go to, and I was very particular about it. I wanted to go to Bordeaux to learn about classical winemaking, which I did in 96. I finished in 95, and 96 I did the harvest, and then off season, you know, during the winter, Blauw-Klippen let me go and work a season in Bordeaux to learn about classical winemaking. Then I wanted to go to California to they've got the best research in the world. They've got the money to put into it. So their technology and their research is absolutely superior to the rest of the world. So, and I wanted to see that sort of research and technology aspect to our industry, which I did then in 98. 99, I went to work in Germany, in the Rhine-Hessen, to learn about how to run a cellar properly, just how well-oiled that machine was to run a cellar, how to run a vineyard, how to take in fruit, how to organize things. It was just, I wanted that sort of structure, how to run a cellar and a vineyard properly. And then the last part I wanted to go to was Italy, to learn how to enjoy this whole lot. And so in 2000, I got an invitation from a friend to actually go and run a small little cellar. It's near Gravi and Chianti in Tuscany. And myself and Santino, which was a 50-year-old Italian guy, had a Ferrari cap wrong way around with gumboots, and he still lived with his mother, typical sort of Italian cellar worker, but he, it was just absolutely amazing. And we would stop at 12 o'clock. Doesn't matter if the press were running, if we were running a pump, filling a barrel, loading of grapes, we would 12 o'clock, we'll stop and we'll have lunch, and we'll drink 2 bottles of wine. Not 1, 2 bottles each. And then 2 o'clock, we would start again, and then we'll finish the day. And it was so amazing. We never started in the cellar, we started in the vineyard. So there was a couple of farms working together. So we would first go and harvest in the morning till the first load was full, and then him and I would drive that load to the cellar and start processing the grapes. So the day that we harvest, you never started in the cellar. You always started in the vineyard, helping the team cut that first load of grapes. So it was very grounding, and it was very enjoyable. And you know, usually during harvest, you always lose a lot of weight because you work so hard and late. And I mean, after that harvest, I was like a little pig, you know, a slaughter pig. I was so fat. I picked up 7 kgs. I was never led such great condition. I was ready for the slaughterhouse if I was a sheep. But you know, and it was just so absolutely enjoyable. You know, that I must say that was my most enjoyable harvest I've ever done in my life, because you know, it's real when you start working in a vineyard and you make the wine, and just the 2 of you, and you stop and you eat lunch and you enjoy it, and you catch a nap if you want to, and then you carry on working till the day is finished, and then you go and then we eat and drink a whole lot. So
when was that, Bruwer?
2000.
And that's when you came back and you started your...
Exactly. Raats family wine. So when I returned, when I finished that sort of part, at the time I was the cellar master del Air. And very funny, when Alessandro Fiori phoned me, my friend, and he said to me, Bruwer, you always said you want to go and work in Tuscany. I've got a job for you. You must come on the 30th of June. And I said, but Alexandra, you should give me a warning. That's sort of 2 weeks before the harvest started. He said, yeah, I should give me a warning and you know, give me just a little bit of time to sort of sort this out. You know, I'm working for Del Air. And so I knew it's going to be difficult. So I signed my resignation letter, and the other one was for 4 weeks unpaid leave. It's the middle of winter and there wasn't really that much happening. So I went to the owner and I said, sir, here's my resignation and here's my 4 weeks leave. And he just laughed. He said, Bruwer, of course you can go. I'll pay you for your 4 weeks as well. So it turned out very well. But as I said that, and when I returned from that, I started Raats Family Wines. And, you know, what I've seen is the most successful people, not just in winemaking, in anything, is people that specialize, people that take all their time and their attention and really try to excel at a small amount of things and really plow their knowledge and their effort into that. So as today, as then, there was always a lot of producers that were trying to be a jack of all trades and a master of none. And I definitely did not want to become that. I wanted to become a master of something. And in my small little world, that was Chenin Blanc and Cabernet Franc. So we established Raats in 2000 after my return from Italy, and knowing that we're going to specialize in these two varieties. And 22 years later, nothing have changed.
What made you choose, let's start with Chenin. What made you choose Chenin?
Chenin Blanc to me was then, and I'm sure most people here will recall, Chenin Blanc was everything but quality. It was off-dry, semi-sweet, bag in the box. Nobody really called it Chenin, but we were drinking a lot of Chenin, but nobody called it Chenin. And obviously a lot of our brandies was distilled from it. So Chenin Blanc was really considered to be a working donkey variety from South Africa. And, you know, when I tasted Chenin Blancs from the Loire, you know, they were absolutely fantastic wines. Sauvigniers, Vouvrays, Côte de Chambres, you know, Anjou Blancs, they were just absolutely fantastic world-class wines. So I thought to myself, you know, we took a thoroughbred horse because Chenin Blanc is a noble variety. By the way, Sauvignon Blanc is not a noble variety. Just by the way, not that I'm taking a dig at Sauvignon Blanc, but just how wrong we got it when and how we applied it in South Africa. So, you know, if you take a thoroughbred horse and you train it like a working donkey and you can't figure out why you're not winning in July, the problem doesn't lie with the horse, it lies with the trainer. So I said, if we take Chenin Blanc and we treat it like a thoroughbred horse, we train it like a thoroughbred horse, we're going to win the July one day. And I mean, those days people thought I was stock raving mad saying this. Today, who will argue against me for Chenin Blanc? So, and that's what I did. Basically, in those days, it was myself, Teddy Hall, which sadly doesn't make wine anymore, and Ken Forrester, that sort of said, we Chenin Blanc, that's what we focus on. That's our main interest, and we're just going to make Chenin Blanc.
We had Ken Forrester on one of these as well. Yeah.
Exactly, and so you would have heard a bit of that history. He probably would have told you as well. We started a Chenin Blanc Association,
yes.
And once we've done that, the whole thing started getting momentum because then we had organization. We rounded up all the people that had an interest in Chenin Blanc or developed one, and then we really started getting this thing momentum to what it is today. So everybody was looking for the solutions on the horizon by planting Chardonnay and Sauvignon Blanc, and I thought that the solution, they were standing right underneath their feet. They just didn't look in Chenin Blanc, because we got 53% of all the Chenin Blanc in the world. And now the Loire Valley only got 25%. We've been growing this variety for over 350 years. It's very suited to our conditions, and we can almost make quality wine with Chenin Blanc in every single area, whether it's a warm area, whether it's a cold area, whether it's a moderate area. You get good Chenin Blanc from today from anywhere in South Africa. So I just saw the potential of Chenin Blanc. And the other thing, and what probably my most driving factor, was that if you make a great Sauvignon Blanc, you would have always been 5th or 6th in the queue. There was other countries that just claimed it before you, like New Zealand and France, Chile, and you know, with Chardonnay the same. You know, there was just too many people. Australia, California, you had Burgundy. So although we make fantastic Chardonnays and fantastic Sauvignon Blancs, there's no argument about it, we would have always been 3rd or 4th in the queue. But if we make great Chenin Blanc, we could have been number 1 in the queue. We could have dictated to the world what Chenin Blanc should taste like. And fair enough, Loire Valley have been growing it for over 700 or 800 years, and it originates from there, but they never called it Chenin Blanc. So we had opportunity to put Chenin Blanc on the label and say, this is what Chenin Blanc tastes like, and create the benchmark in the world of what, let's call it New World Chenin Blanc, let's leave the Loire out of it, should taste like. That to me was absolutely a driving factor. And a great motivation to also go for Chenin Blanc, except that I love the Chenins that I tasted that came from the Loire.
You've ticked that box, because I mean, you know, if there's one variety that's driving the change in our quality perception of South African wine, it's Chenin Blanc, through the quality that we are producing now. So yeah, so that foresight has led somewhere, and the players like you, Ken, with the Chenin Blanc Association, it's all built to where we are now, where we're actually starting to get known for it, you know.
For sure. So, and it wasn't an easy route. I remember in 2012, you know, we had this Chenin Blanc Association meeting, and we were saying we're trying so hard, we're doing so many things, and it just, Chenin Blanc just don't want to take off. You know, it goes and then it sort of pulls back again. And you know, it was really a tough battle. And then I would say sort of from 2014, 15, the tides started changing. And in the last 5 years, it's been a tsunami. I mean, I was tasting at CWG for tasting the wines for the auction on Tuesday morning, and we had to taste Sauvignon Blanc, Chenin Blanc and bubblies. And I walked in, I said, "Hey guys, Chenin Blanc, we're tasting the new Chenin Blanc. That's a new Sauvignon Blanc, apparently." So, you know, in a way, it was a joke, but I think Chenin Blanc has become the new Sauvignon Blanc in a way, in the sense that, you know, that people have realized that, you know, it has so much value. It has softer acidity, it has more structure, it has more depth. And you can buy amazing Chenin Blanc, wooded or unwooded or little wood. There's so many options, and it's so wide, and you'll hardly find a bad Chenin Blanc in South Africa. I haven't, and I've tasted a lot of places. You know, the Chenin Blanc producers have really cleaned up their act and really making consistent top quality Chenin Blanc. And that's not what I say. If you can look at Platter, if you can look at the highest awarded category is Chenin Blanc. They've got the most 5 stars currently in this 2002 edition. If you can look at international awards, there's always from white wine, the highest decorated area is always Chenin Blanc, you know, and it's been said by so many people that have visited and write about South Africa. And we're starting to unlock our true potential now. And you know, 22 years later, it sounds very sort of obvious, but it's been a hard and long road to get Chenin Blanc to where it is today. But in a way, I'm so excited that it happened, and I'm so happy that there's so many producers that produce different variant styles of Chenin across the board from different regions, and they all sort of do us proud in a way. So
that's important. That's important, because Chenin is it's a neutral variety, so it's very influenced by the winemaking, but it's a variety that sucks up the terroir and what the area that it is in, it sucks that up and produces a wine that reflects exactly what the terroir is giving it. And that's why you get such a wide range of Chenin. And I'm glad that you think that Chenins across from price points, also across the winemaking styles, are of such good quality. I've definitely seen it myself. The quality of the Chenin has improved immensely. Yeah. And the other category that people forget, Chenin, we use it for everything, as you mentioned, but it's also very much, it's a huge part in as a white blend component. And often it's the major part of a blended wine. And now blended whites are still a hard category to crack, but it is something that goes well with food, and it's something that it's a next dimension of Chenin. I think is going to come through in that.
Harry, very true words. And I saw it happening when we sort of start getting a real traction and momentum, and where you see it is when people like Woolworths and Macro and sort of really more quality focused retailers started asking for Chenin Blanc, and they didn't have enough Chenin Blanc because there was a demand for it. And I think the next wave that we're entering now is Chenin Blanc blends, and that also makes South Africa unique, in a way, very unique, because although nobody produces so much Chenin Blanc than us and focus on it, nobody makes Chenin Blanc blends either. So Chenin Blanc blends is actually a very new category to the world of wine. It's almost like we created this new sort of style of blending using Chenin Blanc as the base. So that's definitely for the future something that we've brought to the world of wine that did not exist, a category that never existed. So, and it's nice when you part of it and you saw it happening, and it's wonderful to be part of a generation of winemakers that created categories that did not exist. So I'm very excited about that next phase of Chenin Blanc blends, and there's some fantastic wines coming out at the moment through that.
And then Bruwer, is it safe to say, I think I know the answer, that the reason then you also focused on Cabernet Franc, it's not just because they're both from the Loire Valley. I think it's from your time spent in Bordeaux. How did that come about? Actually,
in South Africa, Harry, I told you my first job was at Blauklippen, and out of there they gave me the opportunity to go to Bordeaux and work the harvest. But after the harvest, I went to the cellar master, and they had, I think, 32 different varieties. It was really sort of it cured me from ever trying to make 100 different varieties in one season. But I went to the cellar master and I said, sir, I just want to say, whatever it's worth, I think Cabernet Franc is the best wine, red wine in this cellar, probably the best wine. And he said, you know what, Bruwer, you're actually right. I said, we blended with the Pinot Noir, with the Zinfandel, with the Bordeaux blend, with the Shiraz, with everything that we produce to make it better. Why don't we just bottle it on its own? It's absolutely fantastic. And he said, well, the name Cabernet Franc, people might think that's bitter or there's a negative connection. And the other thing, people see it as a blending variety in Bordeaux blend. So, there's not much commercial value. And I thought to myself, well, one day I'm going to own a cellar and I'm going to make Cabernet Franc, because I just think it's absolutely fantastic. That's what I love. From red wine, when I drink it, that's what I want from a red wine. And one must be careful what you wish for in life, because it might become true. And in my case, it did. And what I didn't realize at that time is how difficult it is. And there's a very, very good reason why so many people anywhere in the world make Cabernet Franc as a single variety. It's an extremely difficult variety to grow. It's very soil specific. You can't plant it on a wide range of soils. You can't plant it like Chenin Blanc on a wild, different sort of climatic conditions. It has to be very specific to make great Cabernet Franc on its own. Viticulturally, it's very difficult. It's light sensitive. It is sunlight sensitive. It's shadow sensitive. It buds too early. It's uneven. it gets literally every disease that you possibly can think of. It's just absolute nightmare. And then in the cellar, once you get it there, it's easily over extracted. It's easily under extracted. It's a difficult wine to make. So, you know, that's why I said you must be careful what you wish for. But
it reminds
what I
me,
did is,
sorry, it reminds me of a previous, I think it was with Ian Nordia, I can't remember, who said, you know, you have these dreams and aspirations, and you end up pushing a very heavy cart uphill, and you push it and you push it and you push it, and you just hope that you get to the top and it starts flowing down the other side and it doesn't run you over.
Very true. And we'll get to that a bit later. But anyway, I you know, luckily the places I went to, I looked at Cabernet Franc, and I went to the Loire and I looked at where they grow Cabernet Franc successful. And I realized that there was 3 factors that you needed. You needed a very medium to low potential soil, a soil that is not too fertile, because Cabernet Franc grows like a weed. You need a soil that's very well drained to get the moisture out of the soil in the early spring, because even if the soil is poor and there's a lot of water in the soil, it still grows excessively. So you needed a very well drained soil, and then you needed something white in the soil: calcare, chalk, limestone, or dolomite. And that I found here where I farm today, and where my little farm is, in Polka Dry Hills, the little ward in Stellenbosch, which is 100% decomposed dolomite granite. So I was just lucky that I knew what I was looking for, and it's also perfect for Chenin Blanc, because in the Loire they use very similar soils for Chenin as well. So then I was lucky that, you know, I had my 2 varieties that I want to specialize in. I founded a little farm here in Polka Dry Hills, decomposed dolomite granite, which I bought, and I had a home for Raats Family Wines, and that became our home. When I started here in 2004, when I bought the farm, Polka Dry Hills was not registered as a ward. Now, just for the record, how Stellenbosch are put together, and most wine regions, is that it is divided up into wards, which have more or less the same climate, terroir, and soil type, like in Stellenbosch, Simonsburg, Helderberg, Bannock, Koelenhof. They all sort of, and Stellenbosch got 9 different wards. And in 2007, myself, de Toren, Reineke, and Zevenwacht applied to the Spirits Board to actually declare our little Polka Dry as a region. So we declared Polka Dry Hills. So we actually created, or we applied to have Polka Dry Hill declared as a ward of Stellenbosch, and we got that in 2007.
No shortage of good wines there in that list.
Yeah. So you know, and then sort of everything fell into place for me in a way. You know, when these things happen, and when you go through the story now, you know, I did not see the end result, but, you know, I knew what I liked, and I knew that I had to go for that, you know, and so I've pretty much always go with my gut feel. And when I knew it was right, whether it made sense to other people, or whether it was trendy, or whether it was in vogue at that stage, did not matter to me, because when I started off, Chenin Blanc and Cabernet Franc were the 2 most uncoolest varieties, not just in South Africa, but in the world. So people really thought I was, as I said to you, my one friend came to me, John Loebscher, which used to be at Steenberg and at Silverthorne now. Yeah. He said, Bruwer, you absolutely, are you using designer drugs? You cannot start a winery just using Chenin Blanc and Cabernet Franc. You will never make it. We'll look after you. You know, if you one day don't make it, we'll organize a job for you. Don't worry. And I said, no, John, I think if you do it well and you do it good, it doesn't matter. Actually, the varieties doesn't matter. You just need to make what you do is make a product that's world class and that is unique to where it comes from. The rest will look after itself. And 22 years later, I'm still here in Polka Dry. and seems to me most people like my Chenin Blanc and Cabernet Franc.
So let's talk about that, because I know that your journey, you wanted to get 10 years under the belt of quality, which you showed. You definitely showed me and the whole group of us here a couple of months ago when you did that vertical, and it was absolutely insane. But when I spoke to you, you were saying that in terms of getting quality and in terms of cracking that nut, you've mentioned it now, your first thing is to focus. So you focused on Chenin and you focused on Cabernet Franc. But you said the other element that's so important is consistency. So you need that consistency over time. So how did you do that? You started in 2000. In 2010, you had 10 wines, and they were all beautiful from the get-go almost.
Sure. Obviously, I had a lot of knowledge, and most people went, and it was always interesting to me is that in those days, not a lot of winemakers necessarily went to work overseas because we were isolated and we couldn't really travel. We couldn't go work in all these places. It was just not, the option wasn't there. So, and my idea with traveling was always to learn from that, see how they do it, but never to copy them, to just take whatever I can from what I learn in Bordeaux or in Napa Valley or in Tuscany, and use all these elements plus what I farm with in my soils, and create with that knowledge, use some of that to create something that is unique to us. So, you know, I didn't look at my wines making it to make a better wine than the guy next door or the farmer over the hill or the next area. My focus was always to create wines that can stand up internationally to the best in the world. And I've been to enough places to know where my varieties would fit into South Africa, what soils I need, what climates I need. So I did a lot of work before I started Raats Family Wines. A lot of traveling, a lot of learning, a lot of visiting places. And so I knew that when I started, I had all the information. Of course, you learn as you go along, and there's always new developments in what you learn, but I had the basics, the bases were right. So, you know, my first Cabernet Franc, that was 2001, and in 2003, they called me up and said, Benny Howard said, listen, Bruwer, we heard you're making a Cabernet Franc. I said, yes. He said, but please enter it for Veritas. I said, Benny, I can't enter this for Veritas because none of the people that on that panel that have tasted international Cabernet Francs, they wouldn't know what international Cabernet Franc tastes like. He said, I understand that, and fair enough, okay, but please just send the wine to us. Yeah, and we, I sent the wine off, and he called me back a month later and said, Bruwer, you wouldn't believe it, you got the first double gold for Cabernet Franc in the history of Veritas competition. Which was never enough. I said, Benny, okay, thank you very much. That's fantastic. And now never bother me again either. I'm not going to enter my wine for any competition or Veritas in particular again. So, so I knew that. And then also, I think another big moment was 2003. It was my 2004 vintage. I was standing in the cellar, and Neil Pindock came along, and he was tasting it out of the tank. We were about to bottle it, and he said, I said, listen, I'm going off in 2 weeks' time. I'm going to the London Wine Trade Fair. And he said, he tasted, he said, look here, Jancis Robertson would love this wine. Whatever you do, although you're going to probably just have bottled it and it's not ready, just take a bottle of this with you to the show. And if she comes along, just show it to her. I thought, okay, well, that's maybe fair. If it doesn't show well, if it doesn't, it's a bottle shock, I'll just one show it. And the show started there in London, and I was sitting there with this freshly bottled Cabernet Franc, 2004, Raats Family Cabernet Franc, and Jancis Robertson entered the door, and I kid you not, she walked straight to my stand, and she said, hello, I'm Jancis Robertson. I've heard you started up here in South Africa. Can I taste your wine? I said, ma'am, you would not believe me. I was told by Neil Pindock to bring a wine for you to taste. And I opened that for her. and she tasted it, and she wrote a wonderful article.
Amazing.
And said this was the Chenin Blanc from Africa. And
Yeah.
that have put us on the map that you could not believe, because Chenin Blanc has been probably one of the most consistent wines from Bordeaux in the world for the last 100 years. And to say that we are producing a mini Chenin Blanc from Africa was just, and especially the gravitas that she had. And that was just, you know, so these small little things happen that just propelled you and sort of just brought the attention and the focus on what you were doing. So, you know, the more you practice, the luckier you get. But I definitely had these moments where things just lined up for me and the right things happened. So, you know, I'm always grateful of that. And I'm definitely not a show pony when it comes to all these things. You know, I very grounded, because I realize I work with nature, and it can change, as we've seen in the last, from a drought to a flood to what have happened to extreme heat. You know, so you know, we for every single vintage that we make good wine, we're grateful for, and we know where it comes from. And the little part we play in just making sure that we don't pick the grapes too ripe or too early, and that we don't over extract or under extract the wines, and that we don't over oak it, is basically just a guidance of what we have to the bottle to give a product that tells a story of a decomposed granite soils in Polkadra Hills in the small little southern tip of Africa. And that's what I wanted to do. And, you know, why I believe in vertical tastings is that in great years like 2009 and 2015 and 17, you can go to any winemaker in South Africa, their wines will be fantastic. But show me your 2004 and show me a 2011 and show me a 2016, you know, that were really difficult vintages where you had to really know what you were doing, where your skill as a winemaker were tested to the limit, you know, and show me those vintages and I'll tell you whether you're a good winemaker or not. So, I did a tasting in 2019 in London at a high timber restaurant. It was for Emma de Compostela wine I make with a partner for mine. And we had 2004 till 2017, every single vintage. Yeah. And we packed it on a table. We invited our top 12 clients. That was arranged through Greg Sherwood from Hanford Wines. And all of them spent £500,000 on wine every year. So it was not people that really invested and bought wines. And we just said, here's the wines. And, you know, I said to them, it's your whole life stands from 2004 till 2007, stands on the table. You can't change it. You can't do anything. Once that cork is, the cork is pulled and it's open, they're going to taste it and you'll be judged according to every single vintage, not just one. And I said to him, it's like, it's that feeling where you run into the world. We just won the World Cup, of course, and I used it. I said, it's like running onto the World Cup final. You can't change anything anymore. You just have to go and play now. So, you know, there was these moments. And the whole thing about that is that showing consistency. So Raats family wines, I have established and I have created a very deep a sort of culture and focus that we're consistent, that we're good at bad years. Great years, of course, the wines are extra, some have something extra, but those difficult years to still be up there, still have consistent and still produce world-class wines. And that's why I did that 10 vintages for you on the family Cabernet Franc in particular. I actually did it last week for Tim Atkin as well, from 2010 till 2020. Wow. 11 vintages, and you know, he commented as well. He said, Bruwer, it's amazing. You know, this wine is just in one band, it just runs like that. Yes, some wines a little bit better, some vintage a little bit, but they're just consistent.
In that tasting, we could taste like the 14 and maybe the 17 there. There were tough years, and you could taste that in the wines. And it wasn't that they were bad, it was that they had similar characteristics. So you could definitely taste the elements. And just on that MR Compostela, we'll go into the ranges now so people can understand the stories behind the ranges. But that 2004 you started with, I believe, won Best Red Blend in Wine Spectator, which is an American magazine for those who don't know.
Yeah.
And that was your starting point. Now you had to go from there for, what was it? It was 13 years. So that's pretty impressive.
Harry, before we get into that, so I think that everybody gets the picture is that, you know, when I started Raats Family Wines in 2000, there was the idea was to specialize in these two varieties, Chenin Blanc and Cabernet Franc, and consistently make them good. And you know, I think 2018 we were Winery of the Year by Platter, and we got 8 5-stars. So every single wine we produced, including those 2 wines in your pack, the Dolomite and the original, got a 5-star. So you know, every single wine we produced got a 5-star. And I think at that in 2018, people didn't really, South Africans didn't really know about, and I'm sure some of you sitting here probably never heard of Raats before. I'm talking in the last sort of 5 years and maybe more recently, but you know, South Africans didn't really know Raats Family Wines because there was no interest really in Cabernet Franc or Chenin Blanc for that matter, and that's fine. I knew that, but I think after 18, for us it was a tsunami locally. People started visiting our winery locally. We started getting invites to doing local shows. It was just absolutely our local market have grown for 5 years now by 10 to 15% year on end. So it's almost that South Africans discovered Chenin Blanc and Cabernet Franc, and they seem to love it. So the last 5 years, and I've always hoped for that. I was always hoping that, you know, they say a prophet is not always recognized in its own country, but which not that I'm sorry I am, but it was so nice for me to see South Africans coming to the stand or visiting the farm and say, Bruwer, we want to taste your Chenin Blanc and Cabernet Franc. And I must say, the last 5 years was wonderful for me from a local point of view. And we've grown so much, and we've expanded so much that it was really encouraging. And I've loved it. I love going now to Durban and to Joburg and to PE and to, you know, Cape Town and locally, just doing tastings and showing, getting invited, and people understand it, and they know we produce Chenin Blanc and Cabernet Franc, and they still come because they're interested. I must say, we're in a very good spot. We're in a very positive and enjoyable time in the development of Raats Family Wines.
So I mean, I get goosebumps on that, because it's the little moments that where you've put a dream in place and you've worked your ass off to make it what you want, which is consistency and all of that. And then you start to see the fruits of that dream come true, and that's incredible, and that's it's powerful for anyone in whatever they do in their life, you know, if you do it properly and you do it. Let's go on to the ranges, because the wine ranges, we can go on forever, but there's a whole lot of wines here. I must just say, winning 8 5-stars in Platters, I think that's the most that any winery's ever won in 1 year from the selection that was put forward for Platters. So that's pretty impressive.
At 2018, yes, that was so. And you know, the only reason I mention it is because of what happened after that from a local point of view, you know. And what's also nice is in 2019, the next year, the Dolomite Cabernet Franc that's in your pack won 5-star again. That's our entry level, and it was Cabernet Franc of the Year. But that said, that's the best Cabernet Franc in South Africa. So what was becoming is our entry level wine was not our entry level, didn't mean entry level for the rest of our category. and it was considered to be one of the best in a category. So, and that's something I'm really proud of, is that what we consider our entry point, some people have considered the best in the country. So that Dolomite that's in your pack, for instance, the 2019 got 95 from Neil Martin. It was the third highest rated wine in South Africa. And at that price point, which is obviously not entry level price point, but we have managed to make sure that where we enter the market, that wine is still exceptional and it's consistent. So and that's what we aim for. That's what we strive for. That's what we work for every day.
Yeah. So you talk about the family wines. There's a huge family influence. I know that you and your cousin, your brother Jasper at Longridge, your son was here giving with the tasting with you.
Yeah.
There's this huge family thing that goes on with it. And you've got the label, the family wine, which I'm guessing is premium. It's not the Eden premium, but it's. Tell us about the ranges and just how they all came about.
Okay. So let's start off with Chenin Blanc.
Okay.
So the first Chenin is the Raats original Chenin, and that's unwooded, and sort of that's in your pack as well, and that is sort of a very pure expression of Chenin Blanc. Then the next one from that is the Raats Old Vine Chenin Blanc, which is a wine that comes from older vineyards, and that's 50% in barrel, 25% in concrete egg, and 25% in stainless steel. And it's a much more fuller, richer expression of Chenin Blanc from older vineyards. So you have the original Chenin, which is a pure expression of Chenin Blanc. You have the Old Vine Chenin, that's a more richer, complex expression with wood influence, and that comes from older vines. And then you have the Eden high density single vineyard, which Wayne, if he's still here, he was here at the launch. That's a single vineyard that we planted high density, and that's a first high density plant. I mean, we plant them very close to each other, like they do in Burgundy and Bordeaux, and you get a very low yield, a very concentrated wine, and that's actually the first high density single vineyard released in the history of Africa, and that's just a very special project. So that is sort of our unique, special occasion, Chenin Blanc. And then we have the mirror effect on that in Cabernet Franc. So the Dolomite is similar to as our original Chenin Blanc, is the very pure expression of Cabernet Franc. And it's half in concrete, half in neutral oak, and it's just very pure. For those of you that have it or that bought the little pack, if you taste it, you'll see it's almost like, and not that I say it is, but in style-wise, it's almost like a Pinot Noir. It's light, it's beautiful fruit, it's pure, and it's just really soft and drinkable. So it's a very pure expression of Cabernet Franc. Then we have the family Cabernet Franc, which I did the vertical for Harry and Tim the other day, which is sort of our flagship. That was our first Cabernet Franc we made in 2001. And that's similar to the Old Vine. It's a very sort of more structured, concentrated, classical style of Cabernet Franc. And then we have the Eden Cabernet Franc, which is a high density single vineyard, and basically similar to the Eden high density single vineyard Chenin Blanc. So we've got 3 Cabernet Francs and 3 Chenin Blancs. But then there's a 7th wonder, is the Jasper Red Blend, which is a Bordeaux style blend, but it's always dominated by Cabernet Franc. So it's true to Raats family wines. We specialize in Cabernet Franc. And then the second component to the wine is Malbec. So I wanted to create a Bordeaux style blend, which are led by Cabernet Franc, but the second highest component to be Malbec, because I always felt that Merlot and Cabernet Sauvignon can sometimes have the same weaknesses as Cabernet Franc, that they can be a little bit thin in the mid palate, and they can sometimes have high acidity, and they can sometimes show slight greenness. Where Malbec is opulent in the mid palate, absolutely rich in the mid palate, and it has this wonderful blackberry fruit. So it really filled out all the weaknesses that Cabernet Franc might have. Cabernet Franc filled in. So the current vintage is a 2019 Jasper Red Blend, which is 50% Cabernet Franc, 42% Malbec, with a dash of Cab, Merlot, and Petit Verdot. And I forwarded the information, but Greg Sherwood last night sent me this write-up about the wine, and he gave it 95 points, which was really, really nice to have that as well. So our 7th wine is then a Cabernet Franc led blend, and it's called Jasper because when we planted the vineyard, the idea started, and I planted Cabernet Franc and Malbec specifically for this wine. My dad was our viticulturist, so he, right in the beginning in 2001, he joined me. He was a retired schoolmaster, but he grew up on a farm in the Klein Karoo, and so he farmed as a kid. He grew up on a farm and he knew farming, but he went into education. And after he retired, I lured him back, and he started working farming with me again as a viticulturist. And him and I planted this Cab Franc Malbec together in 2008. And sadly, by 2012, when we released this wine, he passed away, and I decided to call it after him. And he was Jasper Raats, or Jasper Raats. So that's where the name Jasper Red Blend comes from, is from my dad, and to pay honor to his 9 years of helping me establish Raats Family Wines and his quality contribution to viticulture. He always after, a Cabernet Franc vineyards needs a lot of attention. As I explained, it's very finicky. So where you need 100 man hours to create a great Cab or Shiraz or a Pinotage, you need 300 man hours attention in a vineyard to create the same quality. So Cabernet Franc always needs a lot more work. And he would come here in the evenings to the farm, and his hat was wet, and he was worked the whole day in the vineyards, and he put it on the table and he said, "My son, can't you just be normal? Can't you just plant things like Pinotage or Cabernet Sauvignon or Shiraz? That's not so difficult. Why you have to go and plant Cabernet Franc?" And then I would open a nice bottle of family Cab Franc, and sort of after the second glass, he would go and he'd say, "You know what? It's worth all the effort. If it tastes like this, it's worth all the effort." So my dad was obviously very instrumental in the beginning for us. And my brother in the beginning also had a shareholding, but he went off to New Zealand, and I bought his share out. And then in 2011, my cousin Gavin Bruwer joined us, and we're currently working together. And my son Samuel Raats started working for us at the beginning of this year in the cellar. He's in his final year. He's studying BCom, but it's truly a family business, and we run it like that. The whole company, there's only 7 employees, so we all do at least 3 jobs minimum. There's nobody in the company that doesn't have at least got 3 jobs. But my management style is very, forgive it said, but it's very European in that we qualify everybody very highly, we pay them very well, but we expect the world from them, as I expect from myself.
So tell us about your partnership with Msakana Mbembe and that's obviously the MR Compostela. Because that started, was that in 2004 that started?
Yes. So after I started the Raats Family Wines in 2000, I thought my path is paved out. I'm going to make Chenin Blanc and Cabernet Franc for the rest of my life, and I'm going to be happy. And then in 2002, a guy phoned me up and said, listen here, he had a funny accent. I had no idea who he was. And he said, well, he finished his academical 4 years in viticulture and enology, but he needs to do his practical for 3 months, and he wants to do it with me. So I said, come up to the cellar and come and meet me, and I'll consider you. And then I was at the cellar, and this very proud Zulu guy walked up. He had a lovely smile, open, friendly face, and he spoke English so beautifully. He said, hello, Bruwer, I'm Mzakona Mvemve, and I'm here for the interview. I spoke to him literally for 2 minutes, and I said, you can start on Monday. He even questioned me, said, are you sure? Aren't you going to send me an SMS? Because there was no WhatsApp in 2002. Aren't you going to send, we barely had cell phones. Aren't you going to send me SMS and tell me? I said, no, you just start on Monday. I know when things are right. And it was, we became very good friends. And after the 3 months, he left and went into the industry. And then one night here on the farm, we had a braai, and we probably drank too much wine, like we sometimes do. And then I got clever, and I said to him, Enzo, if you can make a wish, if you rub the little lantern and the wine-making genie would jump out, and you can make a wish, what would you wish for? And he said, to make a consistent world-class wine that doesn't go up or down, that just up there with the best of the rest of the world every year. I said, well, that would have been my wish as well. Let's do it together. So the next week, we registered the company Mvemve Raats. His surname is Mvemve. As I mentioned, he comes from Umlazi and KwaZulu-Natal. And I'm the simple farmer Raats, so MR, Mvemve Raats, that's a company. And we only make one wine. It's called the Compostela, which is the compilation of stars. The Compo, compilation, Stella, stars. And the Compostela means how we make the wine. So we go in the demarcation of Stellenbosch, and each area, each ward in Stellenbosch is known for something. The best cab and Petit Verdot comes from Simonsburg. If you look at Tokara, Glen Ely, Kanonkop, Warwick, the name Del Air, they all come from Simonsburg. So we get our Cabernet Sauvignon and our Petit Verdot from Simonsburg. The Merlot comes from Helderberg, where my brother Jasper is farming. So we get that from there. And then obviously the Malbec and the Cabernet Franc comes here from Polka Dry Hills. And we make all these varieties, separate batches and individual varieties, but also individual blocks. And then we just line all these samples up on a table after a year in barrel. And then we taste through them completely blind. We each rate the wines out of 100. We then go and add our scores up, and we get an average score of each wine, but it's all done blind. And then we arrange the wines on the left that got the highest average score, second, third, fourth, till the lowest. Everything that we score under 90 points, we remove from the table. And then for the first time, we open it. And whatever comes first, the variety or the sample that comes first will be the leading variety in the blend. The one that came second biggest variety, third biggest variety. So MR de Compostela is not driven by a particular variety. You get something like Paul Sour, which are driven by Cabernet Sauvignon, and that's always been the leading. So it's driven by a particular variety. You get something like Merlot's Rubicon, which are driven by a style. And they try to keep that style more or less every year the same. MR de Compostela is driven by quality. So whatever is best from that particular vintage, according to our tasting, we'll use more of, and less of the ones we rated lower. So we have released now 17 different vintages from 2004 till 2018, and not one wine has been exactly the same. And certain vintages, Cabernet Sauvignon was the leading variety. There were certain vintages where Cabernet Franc, Cabernet Malbec and Cab was equal percentages. But it doesn't matter how we put the wine together. It's just that they're consistent in quality. So this wine has done amazing things for our country from an ultra premium quality point of view. Our first vintage, and this is earlier that Harry mentioned, the 2004. In 2006, we sent it to Platter, and it got back and it got a 3-star. And I was so mad. I was spitting, because I've tasted these wines with some of the best wine tasters in the world, and they all said they've never tasted one from South Africa like that. And Platter gave us a 3-star. And Zoe was very level-headed, and he said, Bruwer, calm down. Let's send it to America, to Wine Spectator, and hear what they say. And we did. And then a week after Platter's came out, Wine Spectator, which is the biggest wine magazine in the world, gave it 94, and they said it's the highest rated South African history that they ever rated, best red wine of the year, and top rated wine ever in the history of South Africa. And that contradiction sold the wine out within 1 week. We sold every single bottle that we had, and those days we released it in 2006 for 350 rand a bottle. It was pretty much the most expensive wine in South Africa. And just that people bought it to see, why does Platter say it's 3-star? And Wine Spectators thinks it's the best wine South Africa have ever produced. But it crossed many. This wine was the first South African wine to be in Robert Parker's 50 most memorable wines in the world. The 2008 vintage got that in 2011. It was the first South African wine to get 96 that went over 95 from anybody in the world. That was Neil Martin. It was the first South African wine to be listed on Emirates First Class, and one of 4 wines in the world that has a permanent listing. We're actually sending the samples to them tomorrow of the 2018 vintage, because they're flying again. So Emma de Compostela, what I didn't mention is that once we made that final blend, and we then opened 5 vintages back, the previous vintages, if that wine is not at least similar or better than those previous 5 vintages, we don't release it. So in 2010 and 2019, there is no Emma de Compostela. So currently, we in one of those years, we had to release it now, and we didn't, because we didn't produce. So the last vintage was 18, we skipped 19, and we'll release 2020 in October. We actually bottled it Monday this week.
Amazing. So just in terms of, so I think some of the people on this group know, I give a lot of tours to Americans and Brits, and I give them these immersive experiences. And the one group that I had was staying at La Residence, and it was quite late. And they said, can you please go and, Harry, choose your top 8 wines, whatever. And I was like, first of all, how am I going to get this on a Friday night at like 7 o'clock? But luckily, La Residence is a beautiful cellar. And how do I select this anyway? Because it's like saying, what's your best music? Anyway, I put some Bordeaux blends in there, and I put some Syrahs, and I put some whatever, just a general thing. But we had the Paul Sour, we had the de Compostela, and we had, I can't remember another one. Oh, we had the Villafonte, and those were the 3. And there was a group of maybe 8 of us, and then because of the nature of the tasting, there were other people that came and joined us, because it was quite a serious tasting. And the vote was, in that tasting, I think unanimous, that out of the Bordeaux blends, your Invember Raats was the number 1. So that was just, and that was 2 years, that was a year before COVID. So yeah, whatever that
19, in 2009. You would have probably tasted the 17.
Yeah. I can't remember the exact, I will actually, I can look it up, but I can't remember. Yeah.
So in 2004, we started, Emar de Compostela. That was a tasting I referred to in London when we had from 2004 to 2017 everything on a table for our top 12 clients in the UK. So that, and that's been and the whole thing about Emar de Compostela is that we were two friends, two winemakers that believed that by putting their skill and their artistry together to create something better than the individual. And that is the ethos that Emar de Compostela runs on, is that by working together, by joining, we're going to create a wine that is just something better than the individual ever could have produced. And and I mean, I think the result is on the table today. So if anybody comes here, we do taste it in the tasting room. We do not exclude people from tasting wines like that, because I believe if someone gets in their car, drives here, make the effort to come to Raats Family Wines, we will show you our best wines. We won't just show you the Dolomite and the original. We'll show you the Eden when it's available. We show you the Emar de Compostela. We'll show you the top of what we consider to be the top as well. So that is just how I believe that we should present ourselves to the people that make an effort to come to the farm.
Cool. We've been going for over an hour, and just to finish off, based on what you just said, I was talking about the cost of wines to Bruwer earlier, saying that these mixed cases were at certain price points and whatever, just the wine generally, I've noticed this year that they've gone up sometimes 20-25%, and Wayne will confirm that because he's got the wine shop here, if anyone wants wine. You were talking about the cost and your view on the cost of wine. Do you want to share that, and then we can go into questions and we can see if anyone has anything that they want to ask you?
Sure. We put it up once a year, and that's on the 1st of March, and it's never more than 6 or 8%, which I think in South Africa we all understand that 6 or 8% is very reasonable. I think currently we can probably work in South Africa more to 12 or 14%. If we're really realistic, if you look at everything in consideration. But, again, certain years it's not, and certain years it is more than inflation. I don't care. I just put it up 6 or 8%. Some wines 6%, some wines 8%, depends on how expensive it is. The less expensive probably 8, and the more expensive probably 6, and that's it. So my pricing are very simple, as long as we can make a good living from it, and it's a fair price to the person that buys it, I'm happy. And I think the worst thing that probably upset me is when people win awards or prizes and they put the price up because they won a double gold, or they won a trophy, or they've been awarded something, and then you see the price somewhere goes up as well. I really am anti that. It really makes me cross in a way. I shouldn't be cross, and I shouldn't get upset again, but as you probably can see, I'm very passionate about our industry and where we're going and how we go about doing it. We, from that point of view, to answer the question, Harry, we just put it up 6 to 8%, and that's it. Some years it's more difficult, some years it's easier, but that's it.
Well, listen, Bruwer, thanks so much. Your time, you are so generous with your time. I mentioned how you and your family came through to do this tasting. In Nuruk, it's not like he just went down to Somerset West. And he's on tonight, and his wines are exceptional. Hopefully I don't have to explain that to you. We haven't done a tasting, we never do. This Cab Franc is just so pure, it's so amazing. And if anyone's got any questions, please just unmute yourself, ask the question, and then mute yourself again. You know how it works, or I think most of you do. So cool. Yeah, thanks, Bruwer. Amazing.
Sure.
Anyone got any questions? it's a smaller crowd tonight. I think it's
Harry, Harry, yeah, I've just got one question. Can you
sure.
hear? Yeah.
Yes, Graham, I can hear you.
So you were saying earlier that Chenin does well everywhere, and well, I've certainly totally converted to Chenin over the last 6 or 7 years, probably because I started buying all my wines from the Wade Bales 3-monthly wine sales where I could taste before I bought, and I kind of invariably ended up with Chenins, just purely on taste. But when we have the wine tastings in Swartland area, for example, they claim to have the best Chenins in the country, and then there are other areas as well. But you're absolutely right. I've never tasted a bad Chenin from any area. I just love it because I just buy Chenin from here, there, and everywhere. It's always, well, should I say, it never disappoints me. But you say there's any particular area which might have the edge on Chenin?
Graham, thank you for that. And I think one must, and in a way, it's actually good, you know, that they're competitive and people in the Swartland believe they make the best Chenin Blanc. If you talk to Stellenbosch, if you go to the Morgenson or Ken Forrester, you know, to Remwochter, you know, I'm sure they will tell you Stellenbosch definitely got the edge on everybody. They make the best Chenin Blanc. And that's healthy and that's good competition because we all push each other. So in a way, I like that. What I think from a consumer point of view, what you must establish is which style do you like, because there's definitely, I've done many tastings for the Chenin Blanc Association where I have Chenins from all these regions. Olifantsrivier Valley also now are starting to produce wonderful Chenin Blanc, and the Breede River Valley, particularly focusing on Chenin Blanc. So, and what you'll find is that the Swartland style are probably less acidity, more texture, more weighty, but they don't necessarily have the freshness. In Stellenbosch, you'll probably have slightly leaner Chenin Blancs, but they will have more sort of structure, maybe a bit more depth and a little bit more acidity. If you go from the Breede River Valley, they, again, more to the riper side, they will have slightly higher alcohol, but they will have this wonderful yellow fruit and sometimes even tropical fruit. So each area has the uniqueness according to their temperature and terroir. So it's for you to figure out which one you prefer best, because ultimately there's only 2 wines in the world, one you like and one you don't like. And the only person that decides that, Graham, it's you.
Yeah. Thank you.
Amazing. Yeah, and I mean, just talking about that, you're getting cooler climate varieties down in Bottrofia, and it's adding another dimension. There's amazing Chenins around.
Bruwer, I just want to say thank you so much, because Cabernet Franc is something I've always loved, and so few people make it.
Yeah.
Just for me, it's completely divine, and yours is spectacular. So thank you.
Thank you very much. Thanks, Judy. I appreciate that. And you know, one of the reasons I fell in love with Cabernet Franc is that it's almost 3 wines in one. Because if you think at Cabernet Franc, it has the elegance of Burgundy, it has the structure of Bordeaux, but it also has the spice of the Rhone, all in one variety. And that's why I never get bored, or I never get sort of, when you drink Cabernet Franc, you have fruit, you have spice, that cinnamon, clove, coriander, nutmeg, that baker's spice, but you also have spiciness, and this, the spiciness in that is sort of that what I just mentioned, and the herbaceousness, of course, is the rosemary, oregano, thyme, that Italian green herbs, and then you get fruit. And in Cabernet Franc, in Cab, you have mainly black fruit, but in Cabernet Franc, I found that the Cabernet Franc in the bottom of our little valley it's more red fruit, but the higher up on the mountain in the Polkadra Hills, we actually turn to blackberry fruit. So you have blackberry fruit, you have redberry fruit, you have this baker spice, and then you have that wonderful Italian herbs all in one wine on the nose. And then you have structure, but you got elegance, you got good acidity, and you got minerality. And it just keeps you busy. I mean, when I drink Cabernet Franc, I stay busy. I never get bored drinking it. And I think, Judy, I think that's why you probably like it as well, is that such a gentle wine, such an elegant wine has so much complexity. And that's what I love about Cabernet Franc, is that it can be so gentle, yet it can be so complex.
So how come so few people actually produce it as a single varietal?
There are more and more.
Yeah. There's definitely more. You know, when I started off in 2001 with Cabernet Franc, that was my first one. I could count the Cabernet Franc producers on one hand. Today in South Africa, there's 70 already. Now, so it have grown a lot. 70 is still small, but the reason why, as I mentioned earlier, difficult variety to grow, very soil specific. You can't just plant it everywhere, and it's technically a very difficult wine to make. I read there was Sarah Ahmed did her MW in the UK on Cabernet Franc, and she actually flew out here, and I visited her. I spent the whole day with her in the vineyards and the cellar, and she said that it's the only variety in the world that have not been commercial. I'm talking about mainstream varieties. It's the only variety in the world that have been commercialized. You do not find a 1 million liter or 1 million bottle brand Cabernet Franc. You find it in Merlot, you find it in Cab, you find it in Shiraz, you find it even in Pinot Noir, but you do not find a commercialized brand in Cabernet Franc. It's too difficult to grow, it's too difficult to make. So Cabernet Franc is one of those very rare varieties that when you get it right, it's absolutely fantastic. If you get it wrong, it's absolutely bad. You know, there's no gray areas with Cabernet Franc. It's either fantastic or it's not. You know, and if you make Cabernet Franc, you have to be very careful and sure that you fall in a good part. Otherwise, it can be a real thorn in your side.
Okay, now I understand. But
Oh, sorry.
I wonder if I could ask a question, Bruwer. Firstly, thank you for a really fascinating evening. But a bit of an unfair question in that you have specialized in Chenin Blanc and Cabernet Franc since the beginning.
Sure.
But in hindsight, if you were to think back now, what might have been a third varietal you would be interested in being a specialist in?
Yeah, that's a difficult one. You know, and I must say, I really like Pinot Noir, and I also like Cab. My favorite, obviously, is Cabernet Franc. But you know, in my area, I will never produce a world-class Pinot Noir. I just don't have the right climate for it. Cabernet, probably I could, but then again, we do make a bit of Cabernet for the MR de Compostela. So I do work with Cabernet Sauvignon in a way. But it will probably be either of those two. But I must say, I really enjoy a particular Gevrey Chambertin from Burgundy. I've got a love affair with Gevrey Chambertin. And then also, I really enjoy certain Napa Valley cabs. And I know people have got a preconceived idea of that, but you know, if you drink a Dun cab or a Maya Kama cabs from a cool area on volcanic ash soils, oh, they just absolutely, and they don't pick them overripe, 13.5 alcohol, not over oak. I also enjoy cabs. So probably Pinot Noir and Cab, I must say, those are the other two varieties I really enjoy. And I drink from all over the world. I mean, I really, my hobby is drinking wine from other places.
You're not fussy. You're not fussy. Okay, well, listen, guys, thanks very much. As I said earlier, Bruwer, thanks. Smaller crowd, more intimate, and I think very reflective of the stories that Bruwer's told tonight. So thanks so much. I'm going to, I've got this recorded, so I'll edit it and I'll put it onto all the platforms for those who couldn't make it. But yeah, thanks. And if you're ever out in Polka Dry, there's a lot of good wineries there, but pop in at Bruwer. And you know, even if it's just to taste all the Chenins or all the Cab Francs, it's so well worth it. The wines are so exceptional and it's amazing. So yeah, thanks very much. I really appreciate it. Thanks, Bruwer.
Thanks, Harry, and thanks to everybody for your time and attention. I really appreciate it. Thank you very much. Have a good evening.
Cheers. Cheers.